This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome back, everyone, to the God of War podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network. We are presented by Emprise Bank. My name is Jarrett Sutton. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jeff Hawkins. Jeff, I know your season's concluded on the coaching front, and now you're completely locked in now to the college basketball season as we gear up. One more game for most teams left until we start talking about conference tournaments next week. One more to go for Mizzou. Not been a fun year, but always good to talk college basketball.
Yeah, for sure. I got a little bit more extra time on my hand now, so that's that bittersweet part of it, the sweet end of it. I get to figure out what I'm going to do with my time, and it goes right to basketball, which is fun, because again, you mentioned conference play is ending up leading into conference tournaments, which leads into March Madness, and it's a very fun time right now.
Yeah, no question. We'll dive right into it. Look, we'd love to be starting this podcast talking about a Mizzou win. Yeah. I know, Jeff, we were talking hopefully maybe two, but right now we only got one more opportunity for Mizzou, but been a long, dark road. They're on a 17-game losing streak. Right now, they're one loss away from history, going winless in league play, which is just wild to say, considering last year we were talking about a 25-win team and a top 4 team in the SEC and an NCAA tournament win, and it just goes to show you how quick a team can change in 1 year, just overnight, in an off season. And that's a good thing. There were a couple players that moved on to the pro level and guys that are playing overseas, so there's positive in it. It's definitely not gone the way that I know Coach Gates and the staff thought it would go. There are reasons for that. Coach Gates did meet with the media today, heard a little bit of that press conference. I think there's some truth to what he said. There has been some issues that have gone on with guys and injuries, and I didn't realize the amount of surgeries that have gone on with players. They've had 5 surgeries during the season, not even before the season. So it's not an excuse by any means, but there has been some things that I just don't. There's things that not have gone according to plan, and that's frustrating. But I do appreciate that they're continuing to compete. We say it all the time, Jeff. Like, as players, you want to see guys continue to play hard, not just roll the balls out, and they do play hard, and they are committed to each other. It's frustrating because they're not winning games. They have had lead. The last time we had this podcast, they lost by 5 to Tennessee, which is a top 5 team. They just won the SEC. We thought they might have a chance to go to Arkansas, and in that game, they were close. They had a lead, especially in the first half. They were great in the first half. Arkansas made a run towards the end of the first half, and then ended up blowing the doors off in the second half. Sean East, again, continues to be great. If there's one positive to the season, it's Sean East and the season he's had. We'll keep talking about him because he does deserve it. He's been excellent. I love what Chris Beard said about him in Chris Beard fashion. He said, "I can't wait for him to leave the conference and be done," because I think he gave Coach Beard quite the stressor in Columbia on Saturday. Mizzou had a chance to win that game against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss ended up pulling away late, but Sean East again was great in that game for an undersized point guard, for a point guard that was just kind of in a backup role, that was a facilitator and more of like a secondary ball handler, secondary scorer. He's been one of the best stories in the SEC, and I know it's a winless team, so he just doesn't really get a lot of that chatter that some of these other guys get. But I do give Sean a ton of credit because he has been the leader. Every time I watch a Mizzou game through this losing streak, he looks like he's the same guy, like he's still communicating with the young guys. I do appreciate that. I do think there's something to be said for that. It speaks to the character of the kid. It speaks to his love for the game. It speaks to, him knowing it's bigger than him. And you have to find those type of, I think, I've never been in this situation before, but I think it would be easy to point fingers and go the other direction. And I think Sean East is a big reason why it has not gone that way.
Yeah. And kind of piggybacking off of that, like you said, he deserves every bit of it because he's never complained. And like you said, 17 game losing streak. He's never complained. He still goes out and plays the same from the first game of the season to how he is right now. He's a winner. I mean, and I know that might sound a little weird, but he is a definite winner. He cares, and to me, that's a winner at the end of the day. He's not pouting. He's still giving back to those young guys, coaching them up, not checking out. Sometimes you can see seniors, they get in this checkout mode, and I think that's really cool because he's never checked out, and he's still going as hard as he can. And although it's one game left, he's playing that game like it's one game left, and he's played every game like that. And I think one of the biggest things with Sean that I've always been impressed with watching him, especially this year, was just his consistency. But the way his consistency, I think that was one of the biggest things that I love watching. And there's so many other tangibles when you talk about his leadership, his care. I think, like you talked about, he's still coaching those young guys. And for a guy to be having the season that he is, where, I think I counted like 13 or 14 games where it could have went either way, that Mizzou lost. And again, when you talk about the injuries, the surgeries, like people, outside looking in, it just, you may think, hey, you got the players, just they got to go out and perform. Well, there's a lot of factors that go in, especially when it starts coming to health, and when you're not 100%, that factors with a lot of players when they might not have that bounce, that go that they normally have. So that does make a factor, play a factor, and just sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce your way in some of those situations. Like I said, 14 games to where it could have been a different outcome. So. But the fact that Sean East is, still playing strong, having that leadership, I think that's very remarkable to watch.
We'll take a quick break, but before we do, we did want to tell you about Home Field Apparel. Home Field is committed to creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. Home Field has a growing collection of over 150 plus colleges to choose from, including your favorite team's unique logos, mascots, and iconic moments to create thoughtfully designed apparel. Shop your latest team's apparel. Head to homefieldapparel.com. Use the promo code KCSN23 for 15% off your first order.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Border War podcast here on the Kansas City Sports Network. We're presented by Emprise Bank. I'm Jarrett Sutton, joined by Jeff Hawkins. And Jeff, I did want to kind of hit on something, just kind of diving back into this team. And I do it just to kind of think about what to look for in the future, where this team goes from here. Obviously, there's still games to be played. SEC tournament, Mizzou will get a game there. But if you look at just what has been consistent for majority of the season for this team, I think the frustration that fans have is Mizzou has had leads in a lot of these games in the SEC, and they wonder, like, well, how come they just can't close it out? They have a lead in the first half, or they'll have a lead in the second half against good teams, or they'll be on the road and be in a game, and you're thinking, man, I didn't even think they were going to be in this game. And then they kind of they go away from things that brought them success. And it is something to do with personnel for sure. That's a part of it. I do think there's things that Coach Gates is doing that's good from a coaching standpoint. Like, for them to be in games and having leads, and I know they're not winning these games, but there are some things to take away, because when you look at how they match up with other rosters in the SEC, it's just they're kind of lacking in some areas. I think you saw it in the Ole Miss game. I think they could have won that Ole Miss game many of times during that game. They don't have much of a bench. Their young guys are taking longer to develop probably than what maybe they had envisioned. They're asking some guys to kind of do things that are outside of probably their skill set right And that can be tough to do, especially against good teams. And the SEC is a very improved league. It's much different than when Mizzou joined the SEC back in 2012. I mean, it's a very good league. It's going to have the second most teams in the NCAA tournament behind the Big 12. And, you look at some of these other teams and just the athleticism, the size, the length, rim protection, bench, like Mizzou just is not matching that. And I think that's something that Coach Gates is going to look at as we go to the offseason, and the portal will be a big part of this. Keeping that freshman class intact is very important. Mizzou's got a great recruiting class coming in with Anar Boateng and Marcus Allen, who's a very good defender. Teal Barrett, who's a very good point guard. They got some bigs coming in. I mean, their recruiting class is solid, and they're probably going to be, asked to come in and compete and hopefully be impactful as young players right away. And that's looking, kind of ahead. But just taking what we're seeing this year compared to what they're bringing in the recruiting class, like they're addressing size, they're addressing athleticism. Marcus Allen is going to be a very good defender in terms of being a versatile defender. I think Anar Boateng is a big time athlete, and he's very skilled out of Arkansas. That will be coming in to get excited about. Teal Barrett is just a very floor general, smooth, great decision-making point guard. And for freshmen, there'll be adjustments, there'll be hurdles, but it does feel like with the recruiting class that this staff identified, wait, this is what we're going to have to build at some point. Last year, they go to the tournament and they had to, ride Kobe Brown, who was an older player. They brought in transfers and they really hit that year one, and it was a great success. You look at this year, it's kind of been a step back, which I think everybody kind of knew that was probably going to happen, not to this level. But then moving forward, you just kind of look at what they're bringing in and then what they might look to address in the portal, hopefully. It is going to look different, I think, next year from just a personnel standpoint of what might be different year 3 to year 2. Yeah,
and to me, that key word, again, that's sticking out in my mind is that personnel. And sometimes when you don't have that personnel, that will lead to, sometimes where you see them competing in these games and, they're playing strong for, a solid 25, 27 minutes. And then it's a breakdown. Sometimes the personnel, it'll allow you to break down. And, when you can bring in some good quality personnel from guys that, that are still being able to show that, it's just not, you're not just getting blown out. You're still having a fighting chance. You're just not closing out. You're losing the lead. Sometimes with stronger personnel, you can withstand some of that stuff a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to, see with that personnel. And there's a lot of personnel issues, with the injuries, again, we talked about. So it's going to be interesting to see how that new personnel, when they come in, how they're going to gel, how they're going to be able to fight through some things. And just how they're going to be able to, play, if they're going to have that ability to be able to play through a little bit longer. When you have a good recruiting class, it also helps the level of play. And it starts in the summer, it starts in the off season. So when those guys get on campus in June. So it's going to be interesting to see how that personnel changes with that good, that stronger recruiting class that he has in 2024.
Yeah. You look at, too, like the current freshman class, Jordan Butler has been starting, but he's not really drawing double-digit minutes. So he is starting. Anthony Robinson was playing quite a bit at the beginning of the year. I know and he was kind of banged up a little bit. He played, good chunk of minutes against Auburn, played 16 minutes against Auburn. Trent Pierce has played a few minutes here and there. We'll see. You never know who's going to be back, who's going to be in the portal. That's just modern day today's college basketball. That just is what it is. And, I think this is going to be one of those off seasons where I think Coach Gates and the staff really look at where'd we go wrong? What do we need to do to kind of get this thing back and running and try to do it as quick as possible.
Yeah, I will mention too, these last couple games, Aiden Shaw has really kind of impressed me a little bit. Just from, yep. I think he should be more aggressive on the offensive end because he's getting to the line. He shoots a good percentage. So I think he should be more aggressive on the offensive end because he's still shooting a solid percentage, just not shooting enough shots. But the thing I like most of seeing him when you see that rebound column, when he's out there rebounding. So that's another kid too. When you talk about personnel, getting him into next year with a new with that new personnel, it's gonna be fun to see his development from this year to next year as well too. The start of next season.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I mean he's been great, and I know it's been kind of an up and down roller coaster season for him. But my gosh, is he just a freak of nature athlete? I mean, he is high level athleticism. He is that SEC athlete that just jumps off the page. And you hear other coaches talk about him, just like he just does stuff sometimes in games. You're like, not a lot of guys can do what he just did. I mean, these lob dunks, he's catching where it's like, how did he get that ball? Like the pass is behind him, and it's out of his range, and he can just go get it. I think the biggest thing is the Auburn game is a perfect example of, I think Missouri was minus 25 points in the paint. They got blown out on the glass. Yeah, they're gonna have to address the interior. They were able to get away with it. They played a little small ballish with Kobe Brown and kind of that group that first year. I think things that took place this year did not go. I think they were trying to maybe focus in a little bit of a smaller ball lineup, but they did address size and height if they needed to. It just hasn't worked, and they're going to have to address that as well in the offseason. They got one game to go. They're at LSU. If anybody saw the LSU Arkansas game, both teams, it was back and forth, high scoring. Both those teams were around 500. Missouri gave Arkansas a pretty good game. I expect Missouri to give LSU a game. I'd love to see them win a game, just to kind of close it out and not have the goose egg. But we'll see. That means they're going to have to put 40 minutes together, make shots, defend for 40 minutes, and try to be competitive on the glass and try to be competitive in the paint. And hopefully Shawnees can continue to carry them, and Aiden Shaw can continue to play well.
Yes.
And a lot of these older guys can close out their college careers strong. We'll be covering a lot as we move forward. But Jeff, as always, appreciate your insight. And we'll be talking ball here next week.
You betcha.